Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Sindhu Blume. It is the week of September 15th, and this is your Monday briefing. We are now 15 days from a deadline to fund the federal government with no clear agreement as to how that will happen. House Republican leaders may vote this week on a short-term continuing resolution, or CR, to fund the federal government through November 20th. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has asked Congress to pass a CR until January 31st, 2026. We'll have more on this as developments unfold. In addition to funding the government, there are a lot of moving parts in Washington right now, and that may affect IRS guidance. Joining me to walk through some notable items on the radar is Nikole Flax. Nikole, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, Nikole, last week at his Senate Finance Committee hearing for IRS Chief Counsel, Don Korb was pressed on a number of topics. What are some thoughts following the hearing?
I think probably for me, the biggest takeaway from the hearing is there are many of us who are anxious for all the uncertainty to start settling down within the IRS. And so I think it's progress just to make, these are required steps before you get the politicals in the seats. And I think many of us are optimistic that as the two politicals at the IRS do get into their seats, then that will start an effort on some of the issues that need to be addressed. So my takeaway is it's progress. It's a step in the right direction to start getting those seats filled.
All right, now let's turn to some guidance. Democrats are urging Treasury to rescind CAMT guidance, while Republicans are pushing back on the IRS's use of the economic substance doctrine. How do these competing pressures affect how the IRS issues and enforces guidance?
So, interesting question. Those are, related but separate topics that, the same people in the IRS are dealing with administration and enforcement around those. I think the IRS always seems to be on the enforcement side, kind of stuck in the middle of varying debates about what's appropriate. I think for something like CAMT, the IRS really will work hard to administer the rules that are on the books at the time. And, what happens with that policy will be really, with those regs will be up to Treasury to decide what they want to do there. And I think the IRS will, obviously will follow and administer what is decided. Economic substance, in my view, is a little more complicated. The doctrine itself has been around for a long time. We have seen a significant increase, and I think that's in its use. And I think that's attributable to a number of different factors. So I do think that the kind of external debate around the appropriate use of economic substance, I think it will end up coloring the IRS's view. And, I think they will be intentional and think about when they're using it, but it is a definite hot topic right now. And I think many of us are watching the future to see what will happen there.
And there's been talk Section 899 could be reintroduced if global talks on the G7 side-by-side approach stall. And a reminder that Section 899 would have targeted unfair foreign taxes, such as DSTs or the UTPR. So how should taxpayers get ready for that uncertainty, especially with a possible government shutdown?
So with respect to that uncertainty, I think it just illustrates that nothing is ever completely settled. We see old things that come back, the debates that, folks think have been resolved. And in terms of getting ready for the uncertainty, I think really the main thing is to stay in tune with what's happening so that you have the latest, so that you don't make assumptions that, old debates are dead and gone and that what could be on the horizon. With respect to a government shutdown, unfortunately, I think, folks have gotten used to that drill and how that works. I think it puts a lot of inefficiency in the system. But again, I think it's all about just staying in touch with what's happening and having the latest so you can react really.
So we've talked on the show about pressures at the IRS, from resources to staffing, and I'd like to get a status of where things stand. This year, the IRS and other agencies experienced staffing losses, and at the same time, legislative, regulatory, and other developments not only affect bandwidth for the IRS, but also for companies. In terms of the IRS, how are they dealing with staffing and other issues?
Sure. So obviously the IRS has lost a lot of staffing this year. I think at the highest level, what we're seeing is folks, really doing the best with the resources that they have. Things might look a little differently than they have historically. So there's some work that's gotten shifted because, a particular unit or a program lost a significant number of people. For example, for excise tax issues, there used to be a dedicated excise tax line and you could call if you had issues that needed to be addressed. Currently, that line is not being answered. And so you have to figure out another way to address those issues. On the exam side, there's, lots of attempts at issue resolution in trying to work through their inventory, but exams are proceeding. I think the bigger pain is on the service side, where taxpayers are waiting for refunds, where they have account issues that need to get resolved. And we've really seen a hit with respect to timing on those issues. It can take many, many, many months, sometimes even longer than many, many, many months to get issues resolved. And for some issues, it is really difficult to figure out the best place to resolve those. Fortunately, the taxpayer advocate, the staffing that had been earlier reported that they were going to take a significant cut. The cut hasn't been as bad as was initially speculated. And so there's been a lot of use of the taxpayer advocate service. But again, just, being patient, that wait times are longer, that some of the services that the IRS last year was able to offer at, a certain time frame, everything looks much different right now.
And finally, Nikole, as you're speaking with companies, are you hearing about these challenges? And if so, how are companies addressing them, and what are the next steps for them?
I think it really depends what the issue is. For companies that have a ongoing active exam relationship with the IRS, sometimes you're able to get issues addressed that way. But because of the different silos within the agency, it is really difficult to do that. And so sometimes it does take, trying to go through the normal steps, but then also trying to reach out to people who may be that may know different programs, and just trying to get some advice on how to get things resolved. I think the folks who are at the IRS, I think they're working hard to try to make sure that things continue to run on track. And I think everyone is trying to do what's in their control to resolve issues, but it's just not always possible. I think right now, it's also, though, the IRS has been open to considering problem solving in different ways, just recognizing that they have resource issues. And so if a taxpayer has an idea about how something might be able to be resolved, obviously consistent with, IRS policy, procedures, the law, et cetera, I would recommend making that suggestion and see if that thing might work, because sometimes there are novel issues and you just have to find a creative way to solve them.
Nikole, thank you so much for your insight, as always, and really appreciate you taking the time.
Sure. Thank you.
We appreciate you spending this time with us and hope you have a good week. Take care.